That was intense.
I'm just getting us started.
Okay.
Welcome to the show, everybody. You ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
I honestly think this is gonna be fun.
Okay, y'all, we are answering all of your questions about our at-home birth experience.
Welcome back to the channel. Did you forget that, baby? That's your part.
Wait,
She's
no.
all flustered, worried about the questions and specifically her responses. But let's just say, honestly, genuinely, a quick prayer that the Lord be in these responses and that people don't feel judgment, but they're just, they hear Tori's experience and our journey, and it's a fun, interesting conversation. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. I'm sorry I didn't close my eyes. I was looking at you.
She couldn't tell if I was being serious or not.
I couldn't. I didn't know if you were actually going to pray, so I was like, am I like actually closing my eyes to pray?
I want to get better at just those quick little prayers, because I think sometimes we feel like we have to light 15 candles and kneel down on a scarlet pillow and just like, like, no, just like, hey, an honest prayer. Here's where we're at, God. Tori definitely has had some anxiety around this video and this topic for obvious reasons. If you saw our birth story, if you haven't, you should probably go watch that first.
Yeah.
But do you feel comfortable just jumping in, or?
Yeah, let's just do it.
You sure?
Yes.
Do you care if I start off with like a real one?
Go. So first and foremost, I screenshotted a ton of questions, sent them over to Chad, and then he picked the ones that were most frequently asked. So that's what we're bringing to y'all.
First question. Do you regret doing your first birth at home?
I feel like it's a slightly loaded question. I will answer briefly and say, no, I don't regret it now that it's over. There were moments inside of it where I was like questioning my decision. But post-birth, like that experience was incredible and so blissful, and I was so excited to be at home with Micah. So no, I don't regret it, even though it was hard.
Yeah, I think we have to keep in the context when you watch the birth story video and you hear about some of the trauma or hardships involved with it. That's because she was birthing a child. It's not brought on because of the location. So I just wanted to, which actually leads me to our next question, which is also a fire one, which was asked 1,000 times. Why were you so against a hospital birth? Why do you hate hospitals? What's wrong with you? I'm just teasing you.
Okay, it wasn't that I don't, like, it wasn't that I hated a hospital. Like, if you would have asked me 2 years ago, like, what style of birth I would prefer,
yeah,
I would have said, at a hospital, give me as many drugs as possible so that I don't feel it. That's 100% what I would have said. As soon as we started trying to conceive, for some reason, the Lord laid home birth on my heart. So I started talking to friends about it. And the more I looked into it, the more my heart started desiring that over a hospital birth. And I also was just reminded that me in general, my personality, I get very anxious in hospitals. The only times I've ever really been in hospitals were because of sickness or disease or like someone dying. And so for me, my relationship with a hospital is not overly positive. And so I just don't feel like, I just don't like hospitals. And so for me, I'm like, okay, if this like process is supposed to be, or what I wanted to be, like very peaceful and everything else, I just knew with our home, I feel so much peace here.
Yeah, if I could just piggyback off of that real quick. We have nothing against hospitals at all.
No.
There's zero. It's like everyone's on their own journey. Whether you have a natural birth in a hospital, a medicated birth in a hospital, a C-section, a planned C-section, or you do a home birth. It's like everyone's on their own journey, and there's nothing wrong with that.
And going through the experience, I think gave me empathy for mothers. Whatever you decide, you know what I mean? I'm like, just get that baby out healthy, and like that's what matters the most. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think for us, whenever we spoke with some friends, we learned about kind of the peace of being at home. And I've spent like months in hospitals for injuries I've had, like actual like laid up in the hospital, surgery failed, next surgery failed a week later, then we had to have another operation, but because I had a punctured lung, they couldn't operate because maybe the medication would seep into my like thoracic cavity. I have a lot of experience with hospitals, and I think we both were just like, hey, if we're able to have it at home, why not? And so, yeah. Anyways, next question. And I love my wife. Stop peeking at the questions I'm gonna ask. I see you peeking at them.
I just want to see. What's
I know, but she's like the type on Christmas where she doesn't care if she's surprised or not. She was the type of kid that would go like sneak and look for the presents, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you guys?
I would go shopping with my parents and be like, these are the things I want.
Oh my gosh. I'm the type where I really want to be surprised.
I would like go into the store and be like, I like these things, and then they'd like go outside and then they'd like surprise me out of the options that I kind of gave.
I mean, hey, everyone has their own thing, but I'm not a fan of that. Anyway, so I'm holding my phone like this. Next question is, this is a real one, and I don't want to get too deep with it, but yeah. Anyway, I'll just ask: are you afraid to give birth again?
Honestly, a little.
Yeah, I'm afraid.
For me,
like for us to do that again. I know that you played such a significant role. Yeah. But even my own emotions, I definitely feel fearful.
Yeah. And I think that the beautiful thing about pregnancy is when you get pregnant, you have 9 months to process that you are going to give birth. And what's crazy is I didn't really have any anxiety about birth before walking into it. And so I think that just kind of knowing the experience now, like knowing the level of pain, knowing how long it took, I'm like, man, I don't necessarily want to go through that again. But I also feel way more prepared to go through it again. And so knowing that, I don't think by the time we get pregnant again and have a baby, do I still feel like I'll feel that way? No. But I do feel like I'm still processing it, even though I can talk about it without crying. Like, I feel like God is still going to continually, do some stuff in my heart before the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. Which leads us to our next question. Man, I am a great host. Let me just tell you, the hostess with the mostess. I'm just teasing. What will you do different next time? And do you care if I speak into this just real quick? I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we pulled from our birth story and Tori's labor and delivery is that there's so much we just didn't know. Yeah. And one of the biggest mistakes that we made is that we put too many expectations on what this experience is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And when our experience didn't meet our expectations, we were let down. And it led to a worsening of the experience or the worsening of the pain or whatever we're experiencing. Mm-hmm. And then even we were just talking to a friend who just gave birth a couple weeks ago. We were just like, hey, this is your journey. This is your story. Yeah. Everybody has their own timeline of when they're dilating or how long it takes them to push or this and that. And like, embrace the story you're in because it's different and it's the unique one that you have. Yeah. And so I want to pass it on to you about what you would practically do different. But for me, it's just, we know so much more now. We know significantly more. Yeah.
I mean, I think I even touch on this in the actual birth story, but something I would have done is ask more questions ahead of time. I think there was a part of me that just felt so much peace. Like I just didn't ask a lot of questions. Like, so when my water broke first, I didn't know that now I'm on a timeline. I thought, oh, this is a good sign, like my water broke, we're starting. So I would have asked more questions. And then also knowing my personality, I would have got checked a little bit more. That way I could have known how much I was progressing or the lack that I was progressing, to be able to just do things a little bit quicker. And so, there's definitely things that I would have done different and I would have rested a lot more. I wouldn't have put so much pressure on the actual date of birth. I wouldn't have really looked into oh my gosh, I think my water broke when it was midnight that day. Mm-hmm. I would have legitimately tried to go back to bed. I would have not started timing my contractions until I knew that this is 100% a contraction. I think I started tracking things a little too early because when we say 36 hours labor, that was 12, 13 hours after I had started tracking contractions when we thought my water broke. And so I didn't sleep for 48 hours.
It was bad. And that fatigue led to
so much.
A delay in the process. So we have a question for me. Would you like to read it?
Yeah. Okay. Can Chad give tips for dads on how to be as supportive as possible in the labor and delivery process?
Flippin' dads. Daddy. Can I just talk about that for a second? Have I already mentioned it in another video about how now all of a sudden everyone feels like they have permission to call you that?
Yeah.
Have I shared it on here?
I don't know.
Well, if I have, I'm sorry if I'm a broken record, but Tori and I even went to like the dentist and for Micah to have a tongue tie looked at. And I go into the dentist's office carrying his big carrier, and they're like, "Hey, Daddy," and I'm like, I'm like, my wife is right here. What are you doing right now?
It definitely is an awkward transition.
All right. So what was the question? What advice do I have
for dads?
And it obviously depends if it's a hospital birth or home birth. Your ability to be active. I was actually really able, which is surprising because I get squeamish. Like honestly, even if I think about certain things, my gag reflex sets off. So obviously don't like overexert yourself. Stay within your comfort zone, like stay in your lane.
Yeah.
And feel free to outsource some stuff. This sounds terrible, but we hired a doula.
Yeah. And
a doula was able to step in where I would fall short. And if I needed a break or if I needed support. So for example, if I'm with Tori, like rubbing her back in a certain area, but I need water, Tori needs water, she can go get it.
Yeah.
Or if, you know, because it's taking so long, she could wash sheets or go get a meal and bring it back for us. Or she was really supportive, and more often than not, she would stay with Tori and I would give myself some time to breathe.
Yeah.
But I think that being the best coach that you can be for your spouse is incredibly important. Do not allow any negativity to come from you into that experience because they're going through so much. And I'm not saying that you need to be toxic happy or you're just like, everything's fine. No, you're fine. It's like, no, but just continue to focus on the positives. Like you're doing so great.
Yeah.
You're pushing so well. Like, look how strong you are. It's like, but you've already made it through the last contraction. You can do another one. Like, you know, just really coaching and edifying them and lifting them up, but not minimizing it by saying like, oh, you're fine. You're fine. No, don't say you're fine. I did not say that, right?
No.
I didn't.
Honestly, the midwives and AMC, our doula, were like, we wish we could like hire Chad out to like help.
Yeah, I can't do that again. I'm good.
He was so incredibly helpful. There were so many times where I was like, I hate to say it, but I would look at him and be like, can you help me? Like, or I can't do this. Like, I cannot do this any longer. And your words carry life or they carry death. And unfortunately, sometimes my words are carrying death into the situation, and Chad would need to speak life into the situation.
It was very interesting.
Yeah, and I just needed to be constantly reminded of truth, even though I was like meditating on scripture and I had my Christian like hypnobirthing thing like playing in the speakers, and I was always listening to worship music. There were times when, for me personally, my personality, like I am not my best self when I am extremely tired and exhausted. It's like when I just feel very defeated very quickly. And for so much of it, like that's where I was mentally. Yeah. And so he really had to like lift my arms and remind me that I could do it.
I have some other really practical tips, as in, she's focused on birthing a baby, you worry about everything else. You make sure that there's diapers, you make sure that there's wipes, you make sure that she doesn't feel bad whenever she can't get up and move like she wants to, or if you need to help her sit down in the toilet, you help her do that. Don't let her do anything on her own unless she absolutely like needs to. Like say, hey, I need to be alone, right? You need to have all the tools to help her in her postpartum stuff like lined up. She did a lot of that research. I didn't do that, but if I would have known, I should have done that research to make sure that she has all of her entire setup of stuff, because women for even months after have to do consistent stuff to help recovery. You know, that area like continue to recover. It's not just like we're back, we're good to go. It's like, I know it seems weird, but I think that there's a lot you can do, but I think just it starts with understanding your role in this and knowing that you're her biggest cheerleader. You're going to be coaching her. Don't burn the candle from both ends. So you need to make sure that you have a support group praying for you and helping you. And if you guys want more details on that, I'm happy to share more, but I feel like I'll take 10 minutes answering one question. But just know that it's a massive responsibility to help her deliver. And while she has all the hard work, you do play a big role. And do not be on your phone whenever she's pushing. Like you're in this, and and honestly, ask her what she thinks she'll need ahead of time. Yeah. That way you could just do it during it. Because if she's focused on pushing, you're like, what do you need? What do you need? That's gonna stress her out.
Don't ask questions.
Yeah, don't ask questions. Do you want cheese on that sandwich or no? You're okay. How was your postpartum recovery after birth? And did you tear it all?
This is like such a big question. There were so many of those when I was looking through. I didn't tear fully. I did have like a laceration, I guess you would say, or a cut.
I don't like this conversation.
And so it wasn't through the muscle, so I didn't have to get stitches. But at the same point in time, I kind of wish I would have gotten stitches. That way it was just like closed, and I feel like that might have healed faster than it just being like an open wound. Yeah. Because it really was painful for weeks and weeks and weeks. Recovery was honestly a little bit longer than I thought it would be, and looking back, I didn't really have empathy for down there until I saw the pictures in the video, and I was like, oh! And also because I was pushing so far after my waterhead broke, a lot of times it's a little bit easier when there's still a lot of liquid, and I had been like no liquid left. And so I was pushing out like more of a dry baby. And so it just like...
I'm visibly uncomfortable right now.
Situation.
Oh, how are your emotions with postpartum?
I would say, I semi-talked about this in another video. I feel like now my emotions are starting to regulate a little bit more because we're almost 4 months postpartum now. I do feel like in the beginning, I would just get overwhelmed really quickly. Like my emotions were kind of a roller coaster where it's like, so much joy. He's crying, I'm crying. Like, what's happening? Everything's fantastic. Like they were just on all spectrums, all over the spectrum. So I didn't struggle with any postpartum depression. I did have some anxiety. Like I would feel myself because there for a couple weeks, there was that like couple hours right before bedtime where Micah was really, really fussy and like struggling with some colic, and I could feel myself around that time. Like I knew the hour was coming when it was about to start, and I would feel myself getting a little anxious before bedtime because I never knew what the night was gonna look like. And so I did struggle with some anxiety. It's gotten better, but it still flares up here and there, so. If I could give you some quick encouragement on that, it's like, feel free to have like a roster of people who can help you in moments like that, whether you have like a mom friend or multiple, or like a Christian counselor to walk you through that stuff, someone who maybe specializes in that. Have a lactation specialist, or if you need to hire a night nurse once a week just to kind of help where that person or a family member is with the baby, and then when the baby needs to feed, the baby comes in to feed, and so Chad's mom's done that for us a couple times, like 3 times, and it's been so helpful because Micah wakes up a lot in between feedings, and so even though he'll go 2 or 3 hours during the night between feedings, he like wrestles and like does a bunch of stuff where I'll like wake up and be like, is he okay? And so I wasn't even getting like the 2 to 3 hour spurts, but when Chad's mom did come over, I was able to like feed him a full feeding, make sure he's burped, give him back to her, and then I knew that I had 2 or 3 hours of like legitimate rest in between. And I remember waking up at like 6 a.m. the next morning and being like, I literally don't know what to do with all of this energy, because it's crazy what sleep deprivation can do.
Yeah, and that's one of the hardest things is sleep deprivation, because you just become the worst version of yourself in everything that you do. Yeah. Anyways, you ready for the next question?
Yeah.
This is the second most asked question. Does this difficult birth deter you from wanting more babies in the future?
No. I mean, I still want the same amount of babies. I think that it it definitely has just opened our eyes to the process.
The reality.
And the reality of what having a kid looks like. I think that Chad and I didn't really, truly understand how much freedom and time we had. But when I talk to like friends of ours who are parents of multiples, they always say that the transition from 0 to 1 is the hardest, because you go from your time being your own to your time no longer being your own, and kind of centered around like what the baby needs. And so once you're already in that like parent mode, I hear it gets easier to transition to the next kid, to the next kid, to the next kid. Am I like nervous about birthing more babies? Yeah. Like I'm not like necessarily like jacked to do it again. But the joy of having Micah, and even now we're like getting to more of like a fun stage where he's like starting to giggle and be more interactive and smile and figure some things out. It just makes me so excited to experience that with more children.
I mean, of course, I'm not the one who labors and delivers, so I'm aware of that, everyone. I feel a lot less fear about going through the birthing experience, even with some of the stuff I experienced during that, as honestly just how hard it can be to the first 1 through 3 months. Oh my gosh. I know everyone's story is different. And Micah really struggled with a lot of gassiness and the tongue tie, and then colic, mastitis. And Tori's mastitis, and there was a bunch of stuff there that, like, honestly, like even to the point now where this is, I mean, you guys don't care about this stuff, but now we have to hire someone to be at our house whenever we want to do any work for you all. Like, legitimately, we want to record a fun video like this, we're paying for 2 hours of help. And it's just like, sometimes I do get a little frustrated because we'll go up to do our daily podcast, and Tori and I just had a long heart-to-heart about this the other night, where it's just like, I don't feel like I'm asking for a lot for just 10 minutes to just record a podcast that we hope will bless our audience. And more often than not, we can't do that without help. And so we are excited as he continues to be more okay. And we have experienced spurts of that, but it seems like every week he changes. Like, seriously.
He does. It's like every single time we feel like we've figured it out. Like, this is how he prefers to nap. This is the time and the schedule that he enjoys. It's like 2 days later, that thing that worked is no longer working. And we're like, what happened? And then just as he started liking sleeping with the swaddle, like the little one with the arms up, like now he starts rolling over and he can no longer sleep in a swaddle. And we're like, oh no, because his little strong reflexes. And so since not being able to do the swaddle, he is like not sleeping well at all. And so definitely like navigating the newborn stage has been tougher than we thought it would be. And just the reality of what that looks like has been tougher than we thought.
How would you encourage mamas planning their first home birth, or women just preparing for their first birth? How would you encourage them, or what would you tell them?
I would say, don't have a ton of expectations. I think that I watched so many videos of like pain-free birth experiences and like these beautiful home birthing experiences where it feels like the baby just fell out of them and they're smiling and giggling and laughing, and I was just like, that's what our birth is gonna be. It's all about my mental game and I can control how I'm thinking, and I really just like went in thinking that that was gonna be my experience. And when it wasn't, very similar to what Chad said, when your expectations do not meet, your reality doesn't meet your expectations, you can be really disappointed. So I think having like a plan A, B, and C, like, and not going in with this is exactly how I need it to be, and if it doesn't happen like that, I'm gonna be disappointed. But going in with the goal and the mindset of like, however this ends up happening, I'm gonna get to meet my baby soon. And like, that's what would drive me, because there were so many times where I was like, I can't even imagine the baby coming out now. Like, it's been so long. Like, I don't know, like, is this baby ever gonna actually get out of my body? But when I would think about like, the end of this experience is me holding my baby on my chest. The end of this experience is me holding my baby on my chest. And every minute, every hour that goes by, you are 1 minute and 1 hour closer to meeting that sweet little baby. I feel like that's what the mindset that I would encourage you to have is, no matter what happens, no matter if you're at the hospital, if you're at home, if you're at a birth center, if you have pain meds or you don't have pain meds, whatever you're going through, just keeping that mindset of like, God has you, God's with you, and you're gonna meet your baby soon. Like that's, because after the baby comes and he's on your arms or she's on your chest, like it doesn't like matter as much how it happened, as long as like baby's out and healthy. And
I'll just say one quick thing, nothing can prepare you for this. This is all a big learning experience for you and your growing family. And because of that, like even Tori and I have so many friends who have young ones where we're like, oh, we're gonna know exactly what to do. Even parenting so far has been really hard on us. And it's one of those things where you don't know stuff and you have to figure it out. But whenever you're operating from a mindset as I'm supposed to know this and I'm having a bad time because it's not working, versus, oh, we just brought new life into this world and we're figuring things out. Or during even the birthing process, it's like, you don't know everything, and be willing to be a student of this and learn and have your husband learn too. And this is like a process to grow in rather than a process to dominate. This is like not a dominating process. This is something that you experience, and
it's a humbling process. And I honestly am grateful for it, because I think even with this channel, had everything gone beautifully right, and if parenting was super easy, I think we would have had a hard time not being like, okay guys, here's how you do it, and this is like the perfect way to parent, and this is the perfect way to birth, and everything else. And the Lord's like, I'm gonna humble you real quickly.
He's like...
And so we are here just sharing our experiences and sharing like what God is teaching us through this humbling process. And none of this is to say that we don't love being parents. We don't feel so insanely blessed to have Micah. Like, no, we're just like, oh wow, like
it's real.
It's real. And we have to lean on God way more than we thought we were going to have to. And so
and that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Anything that drives you into the presence of the Lord.
2 more questions. The first one's for me, then the last one's the juicy one. Chad, what helped / how did you process everything afterwards? My hubby is struggling. Well, I know what it's like to be on that struggle bus, so buckle up, because I'm going to take you on a journey to healing. No, in all seriousness, I'm not one of those people that says time heals all things, because I don't believe it does. But the longer that we've gone on, the better I felt about it. I had less hidden anger towards him because of the pain that my wife went through. And I saw her joy with him, and if she can let go of the pain that she experienced, then I can let go of the pain I was holding on to her for what she experienced. I like to look at it as like, this is maybe not the best analogy, but imagine you're driving in a car and there's your windshield right here, and then you have your rearview mirror right here. There's a reason why the rearview mirror is so small. It's because you glance up in it to help you guide your path, but like you can't drive looking in the rearview mirror because you're gonna crash into stuff. And so where you set your eyes, there you go. And so it's important to not dwell on it too much. I do think it's important to process those things. That's why I actually got a book out that I'm currently going through. It's called The Voice of the Heart, A Call to Full Living by Chip Dodd. And one of the, like, a lot of guys are afraid to dive into this stuff, but one of the best parts about it is it talks about the different feelings that you can have as a person. And there's 8 of them that the book mentions. And so I think it will help your husband process what's in the feeling behind the feeling. Okay, he feels anxious about something or sad about something. Okay, but what's behind it? Is it because he feels let down, or he feels dejected, or he feels frustrated? Okay, what's the feeling behind the feeling that allows him to put a name to it, to say, okay, now I understand that I'm not just sad, I felt let down because of this, and now I can target it and work on that thing specifically. But another big thing to do is to pray and ask where God was in the situation. And I really had to do that. And if you watch the birth story, you'll see the response that I got from God, which is really special to me. But yeah, so it's not a perfect thing, but that's just a little thought on that. Okay, and the last question that everyone's been asking. There was actually a lot that people kept asking, but as you can tell, we talk a whole lot, so we need to do like a 15-part series. One of the most frequent questions that we're not going to answer is, what name did Chad have? because I had a different name. So anyways.
We're not going to tell you because if we're blessed with another boy, that will probably be his name.
Yeah, we'll see. I might have another name.
Who knows?
All right, the question is, how has sex been after such an intense birth? Let me just tell you, for my boys out there, patience is a virtue, okay? Do not make them feel bad about their recovery time.
Yeah. And
you just do your best.
Hang in there, guys.
Hang in there. It's a process, and it's still a process.
Yeah.
4 months down. And they can be a physical thing where people are struggling with, or it can be like an emotional thing.
Or a hormonal thing.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
And so this is something that we're not going to dive super deep into, but it's a very real thing.
Yeah, well, I don't think enough people talk about it. Like, I feel like everyone hears, like, you have a 6-week recovery time, and then you're, like, clear and ready to go. And, like, I, again, had that expectation. 6-week mark. Christmas Day, let's do this. It was Christmas Day, the day that it was like 6 weeks.
It was not Christmas Day.
And I was not physically ready, and I talked to my midwife about it, and like when you're breastfeeding as well, that can like different hormones are not doing certain things, and it was much harder than I thought it would be to like get back into the swing of things. And I've talked to other mamas and they've said the same thing. And I do hear that with each birth, a lot of the time the gap closes and you do feel a lot better.
The gap of time, let's just be clear. With
the gap of time between like birth and when you're like ready can shorten. Okay, but yeah, it definitely has been different. And some women are like totally different, where they're like, sex is like even better after birth. I'm like, wow. But yeah, it definitely, maybe we'll talk more about it in a couple months.
Yeah, and you just have to, again, just like the whole thing is, don't live your life looking in the rearview mirror, because right now we're celebrating the current season we're in. Mm-hmm. If we're constantly upset because we're not living the life we used to have, well, guess what? That's the life we used to have. Now we have a new life. And Tori's always changing, Micah's always changing, and I want to celebrate them in their current stages, not the way things used to be. And guess what? In 5 years, it'll be even more different. Mm-hmm. And so it's a really healthy way to go about life. But don't get me wrong, there's definitely difficult seasons for everybody.
Maybe we should have a video that's in our Let's Talk About Sex series about seasons of sex inside of marriage.
The playlist continues.
The playlist continues.
All right, we gotta go.
Okay,
love you
guys.
all. We'll talk to you later.